Great. And all right. Hello, Katie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh. So
Awesome.
yeah, we are waiting for two other people. So hopefully they will be here soon. One person is having some tech issues. Hopefully the other one will be here. Lickety split. But yeah. All right, Katie. It's up to you and I to entertain the audience. Audience have to be entertained by Erudite's pantomimes right now. But for you and I, what are we gonna do?
Okay. Start stripping. Do it.
I already did it. I already provided the entertainment, right? You got to be a long-time PrimeCayes fan to have seen it.
Wait. Why do I have to do all the work now? That's insane.
I didn't say you have to do it. You're right. I didn't say anything about stripping.
Well, I'm not gonna strip. That's for sure. That's on you. But like you can like do something. Like just take off your sweatshirt or something.
Sorry, I don't repeat content. So like
I've seen you repeat content plenty. I don't think that's an issue.
I don't know what you're talking about. All original, all the time. Each topic is different and nuanced, right? For the almost 2 years I've been doing this. Different and...
Wait. Chad is saying you're not wearing pants. Stand up. Stand up.
Pants.
We gotta see you, boo.
Yeah, I'm wearing pants. I happen to be wearing pants today.
Fuck off.
I'm sure you were quite excited, but look, that's only for my lovers, all right?
Oh God.
It's like it is what it is. It's only for the lovers in my life.
Can I change my cam? Can I have a different cam? Yes, I can. Oh, look at that.
But the other one was nice. You could like.
But it's so close and like personal. Someone told me I'm doing a Mr. Girl thing when I have that cam.
You mean you're showing your face?
And then very close to the camera manner, you know? I don't fucking know.
Is that
dude.
a Mr. Girl thing? What? It's a camera thing that people do. What? So weird.
Maybe people are just excited about Mr. Girl. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you anymore, but I can hear you.
What? Why can't you see me?
I can see you, but like not as great.
Fine. I'll do. You make it so. Fine, I'll change it. I'll do it for you. This isn't quality entertainment, by the way.
I know this isn't. See?
And it's so close.
It's such a good view of you. It's really nice.
No, I am not. I wish Erudite was here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So audience members,
they don't know what the topic is.
We don't. No, we have no idea what the topic is.
Okay. Am I the anti-Israel person, Prime? Am I anti-Israel? Is that my take?
You are our local anti-Israel person. Who else would it be?
To be fair, I'm more anti-Judaism than I am anti-Israel.
Oh boy! As long as you say it,
makes you feel any better. Wait. When people say they're anti-Islam, they might be cringe, but it's like I'm just anti-religions in general, and I just have my strongest case against Judaism because I know a lot about it.
You should say anti-religious and anti-Judaism. Here in the States, people freak out about that and assume the worst.
Yeah, but I think it's really weird. It's like the conflation between Jewish, the ethnic group, and like Judaism as the religion is kind of like where a lot of the issues come in, you know? Like the fact that you can't criticize Judaism as like a religion, it's really cringe, you know? We criticize Christianity all the time and criticize like Islam or any other religions. So why can't we criticize Judaism? It doesn't make any sense, you know? Especially because a lot of Jewish people aren't religious at all. So it's like, what's the fucking problem? You know,
Uh,
Jewish people have shitty things to say about Judaism all the fucking time. So
I agree. Everything you said makes sense, right? But people react with emotion, and will like just listen to you. So instead of saying, "Oh, okay, well maybe she's trying to make a broader point about Judaism," right? It's, "Oh, you must be anti-Semitic," and have
well,
something
I have my Jewish shield on me. It's like I'm apparently Jewish, so I can't be anti-Semitic. See,
exactly. It's
problem
impossible now.
solved.
Yeah, that's yeah. It just
That's all it took.
I hate that non-nuanced view, right? One saying that, oh, just because you're a part of a minority group, you can't be anti that minority, right? In a toxic, racist way. Of course you can. You can absolutely be capable of doing that, and we see examples of that in real life. So that's not a shield. But at the same time, just because you're having a criticism of a culture, right, or religion, doesn't mean you're anti the people. Just like anti those things that they do sometimes.
Yeah, and it's also like even weirder because I guess what I'm trying to say is like for me growing up in because you know there's people who would go like internalize misogynism or like people who are self-hating and stuff like that, and I don't like those interpretations either. Like I think there are ways to like criticize stuff that you come from without you having like internalized hatred towards yourself, kind of like how there's a lot of discourse about like white people hating themselves and like whiteness and shit like that. It's like, no, you can just criticize a lot of shitty things that like objectively happened, you know? That doesn't mean that you hate yourself. Like the fact that you're faced with like a negative thing that you did or had part of, and that like automatically translates to hate to you is kind of like a you thing, not a everyone else kind of thing, you know? Um, but just to clarify, I guess like coming from Israel talking about Judaism is kind of like punching up because in Israel, like Jewish people are not really a uh, weak, meek minority who's been marginalized. They're doing most of the marginalizing. So, you know, I forget a lot that Americans have it differently. So there's that
Yeah,
too.
and Americans have a really tough time seeing outside their perspective, something I keep like running into fucking constantly, right? Is that like uh they can only see within their like own context, and which is like fair, like when you're starting out looking at the world, right? Of course you can see it only through your own lens. But like I'm trying to get some people to like see there might be other perspectives and to look at the world through that way, and maybe alter the conclusions they might come to as to why people do the things that they do. Um, but yeah, so everything you said is absolutely correct, Katie. But in terms of how people will react, even if you have you state all of that, make it very clear. Oh no, you must be anti-Semitic. That's like it's like a, you know what it is? It's like one of those thought terminating phrases, right?
Hmm.
Where you just like
Thought
put out there.
terminating
Oh,
cliche.
cliche. Excuse me. Yes.
You're a Nazi.
You're a Nazi, right? Exactly, right? And you can just end the discussion right there, right? Like I don't have to put any more thought into this. I don't have to be any more critical into the matter. It's done, right? Like you've said a thing that I can vaguely pin to anti-Semitism, and that must be it.
I think also what anti-Semitism is for like, because the marginalized group is mostly heard in the United States by like hate crimes of Jewish people, right? And I do in some ways um, forget that, or not so much forget it, but it's like in Israel, it's really common. Like, I'm going to call it propaganda, basically. Like, the world is dangerous. There's no safe place for us but here, shit like that. When people in Israel get murdered, probably more than they do in the United States for being Jewish and stuff like that. So it's just like, for me, it is hard for me to sometimes recognize how much like anti-Semitism and like hate crimes are actually like a real thing that happens like outside of Israel too, and how prevalent it is and how much of a huge issue it still is. But it's hard to do when I'm constantly coming from like um we call it in Israel like leftist like stance about like Israel-Palestine conflict, because in that conflict, like Jews are sure they're being aggressed upon, but I see it as more of like as a part of like the Palestine like liberation movement, which is still terrorism, part of it, not all of it, but the illegitimate parts sure are terroristic. Um, there's no doubt about that, but I do forget how prevalent it still is, like
How,
outside of Israel.
how can you tell what part is terrorism and what part isn't, right? So there's obviously the part that is like just like marches and speeches by Palestinian individuals, like fighting for their rights. So that part's easy. But in terms of a struggle back, right? Like a violent response to the incredible violence that they are getting. How can you tell which one is terrorism and which one is?
Well, the one that is easy to call terrorism, it's like that in the past months or so, like more than 10 like civilians were murdered by Palestinian terrorists, So that's really easy. Like it's whether it's for the sake of like a liberation movement or not, I'm not going to support like hurting civilians who have done
Mm.
like nothing wrong. And you can argue that they're part of the occupation, sure. Um, but that would be like saying that murdering white people who are part of like systemic racism is okay. Like
Mm.
that's not really how it works. If you want to fight against like the oppressing government, like there's a statement. So like there are valid arguments to be made about like attacking military forces or attacking like police forces and stuff like that, which also people in Israel definitely don't accept. Like in the TV, if a Palestinian civilian tries to hurt like and succeeds in like killing a military officer, we call it murder, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not really what murder is. That's not how that works. And it didn't used to be the rhetoric, but it is now because Israel is further like continues to
Yeah, but
radicalize, right? Um, but I can't in like my right mind not call attacking civilians terrorism,
but
like
the
because where's the
vast
line then?
but the vast majority, like Israeli citizens, are also like former members of the military, right? You guys have the that draft. Um, so if that's the case, and let's say you targeted adults, right? Most of them would have been former military. So then maybe from your perspective, they're legitimate targets. I mean, they don't currently have the uniform on, but they may have done something wrong, or they supported the occupation that way. Um,
I understand the same way that like the terrorists who did like 9/11 saw the people who were in the twin towers as like legitimate targets,
mhm.
and that's like fine if that's their perspective, but that's never a perspective I'm going to get behind on. Like you just because someone can justify to themselves why what they're doing is a murder or like justified murder doesn't mean that I'm going to be on board with any of it. Some justifications are fine and some justifications aren't fine, and like we can examine those. I'm not against. There is a really difficult, hard conversation to be had about like how much of like um, a liberation movement is allowed to like harm people from the oppressing force. And like me coming from a very timid, like pacifistic, like personal stance, I really struggle with that perspective. But in terms of like what's been happening for like the last month and what happens like every few years or every year, basically, when there's like a wave where people are going around with like knives and scissors and like screwdrivers and are just like getting on a bus and just like sticking it in someone's like chest. You can call it not terrorism if you want to. I just don't know what you would call it otherwise, because that not only has it not helped anyone, it actively made everything a lot worse. And I'm not saying that all fighting for liberation does that. I'm not saying that all resistance is actually making things worse, but like civilians that are like, or the easiest example is like one of the terrorists who've done the attacks was someone who was allowed to come in from like occupied territory. So usually they're not allowed to come in here, and some people get special permits to go to work in Israel territories. And because he did that, a bunch of people lost their jobs, So he actively made things like a lot shittier for a lot of people. So it's like when you're fighting and when you're resisting, there's also like logic to it. I don't believe in like nonsense killing. I don't believe in killing in general, but it's like if you're gonna like try to hurt someone or like going to actively try to potentially murder someone for a liberation movement, how about you do it in a more tactical way that actually makes sense, that doesn't hurt your cause, you know? And I realize that argument could be made for like BLM and stuff like that. But again, like if someone can't see the perspective and like the difference between something like mostly peaceful protests by BLM to like someone taking a screwdriver and sticking it in someone's chest in the middle of the street on a bus just because they're really hateful. Like I don't know how to help with that, Like if you don't think that's terrorism, like that's fine. I just don't know how to qualify it as anything else, right?
Yeah. So I'll make it very clear. I'm not like about to like defend like these actions, right? That's like not what I'm doing. I'm just literally just exploring the topic with you because I'm stalling for fucking time. But
I am aware.
I just want to make that clear. Like to the audience, maybe they don't understand that. So I am just like exploring this topic because I think it's actually really interesting, right? Like Nelson Mandela did actions that later on he saw it as terrorist attacks, but like he was fighting for his liberation, right? He denounced his own actions, but like at the time he thought he was fighting for liberation. He made attacks against certain targets, and from a brutal oppressive system. I don't know enough about those targets, like those actions, to make a statement about them, about how I feel about them. I get the vague sense that I wouldn't be so opposed to it from his perspective, but I don't want to make a definitive statement there because I just don't have a firm grasp at his history. But like I think it's interesting you said like, oh, like it's not making things better. Well, lots of times it doesn't make things better, right? Like our response does it, like, one, a peaceful response may not make things better, right? A peaceful response oftentimes was just fucking neutral, or it can make things worse in terms of Black Lives Matter, right? A peaceful response, largely peaceful response to oppression, and in some cases it made things worse. In some cases it like expanded the powers of the police, right? It created this great backlash in the country. So were we better before BLM or after? I don't know, it depends, right? And in terms of like when a liberation movement is using an armed response, right? Like when is that ever good then, right? Like when can you ever have an armed response in that case? Because yeah, you're gonna kill someone. You're gonna kill someone, and it's gonna be someone's family member, and they're gonna have to love them, they're gonna miss them, and they're gonna hate you for it. So I don't judge it on making things better and that like it's turning civilians away from you. Sometimes you have to do that. Look, like in terms of dying. Not that I'm like supporting these actions. I'm just saying that like this is how complicated things are when you're talking about like liberation and like fighting oppression. Like there's it makes villains of us all, as I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. And I know that we're just exploring the topic, but that's why I said like I qualified it with like obviously not all resistance is necessarily making things better, and also what making things better is pretty relative. It's just like I'd argue that there are a lot of things like separating, for example, BLM and like the Palestinian Liberation Movement, just even in terms of like a simple thing like the fact that Palestinians, people in occupied territories, are not citizens of Israel. Israel doesn't owe them anything. Everything that Israel does for them is basically Israel feeling like they're doing them a favor. Like when we give them electricity 4 hours a day, that's us doing them a favor. Most people here are not for that, Like when like there were yeah, and like Americans don't get that. They're like, oh, human rights and shit like that. And it's like that's not how that works here. When there's a wave of terrorism and like people are getting stabbed in the streets for being Jewish, that doesn't make the Israel populace going, oh, we should definitely treat the Palestinians better. Would anything make them go like that? No, maybe. for sure, some things I feel like we're moving further and further away from that, but I don't think that like when I say it doesn't help, I mean that I gave an example of how people are being genuinely hurt by these actions, about how it causes more tension and like more division, and it makes Israeli people or Jewish people in Israel more scared and more hateful back, you know? And when we're hateful back, it's just unfortunate that Israel has a lot more power and has a lot more ability to come down a lot harder with their approach, right? So when things happen, we can retaliate in a way that might not be as proportionate or as fair. Though, to be fair, specifically with the escalation that is currently happening, Israel has been taking a pretty mild approach.
Oh, mild. When I mean, I mild in terms of like what all the things they've done in the past, I guess, in that spectrum. But mild in like
Yeah.
what they're doing at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It doesn't seem mild, at least to the people who are suffering under that. It doesn't seem mild at all. But I hear what you're saying. Like, oh, they could just bomb the place to fucking rubble like they usually do. So
Well, that's a bit of a mischaracterization. I also don't think like I might be reaching here, and I'm not an Al-Aqsa expert, but I doubt that you know a lot about that. But just for to exemplify, like I just listened to the news yesterday, and they talked about how last year what happened with Al-Aqsa was a lot more like aggressive than how they're handling it this year, just proving that it raises action and like criticism towards what happened last year, because kind of like it seems like the police are completely capable of handling this in a more mild, like composed manner. So why weren't they doing that last year? Like why was all the ruckus and like those activities necessary when like clearly it can be done in a more peaceful, more like reasonable way? And you might see the pictures and be like, that's not reasonable at all. On the other hand, it's kind of like, I would love to hear other options, I guess. I'm not saying that what they're doing is the correct option, right? I don't.
are there
Alexa's really
options other?
complicated.
Oh, okay. So I want to dig into that with you later, and I'm willing to admit there might be context I'm missing here. But from what I'm seeing, like those actions are like fully unjustifiable, from my understanding of it. But I'm definitely willing to believe that there's like a lot of context here that I'm missing. So I'll say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree, probably.
You would agree that
At
I'm
least
wrong?
from the
Uh,
perspective, I would agree that there's a lot of context, like in the same way that like for me there's a lot of context typing, right? But it's just like the other side of that perspective, like, well, you know, for the terrorist, this isn't terrorism, this is like completely justified. And it's kind of like the same on the flip side for Israel. I'm not saying that everything's completely justified and not, but there's a lot of context there for sure. um yeah, I agree with chat, by the
oh,
way.
what did the chat say? I don't know. Did the chat say I'm
um
right? I would agree with that part too. Um,
Chat said that you are kicking my ass in this debate right now.
this is true. This is true. I didn't know it was a debate, but like I fully accept my victory and your complete and total surrender. But I think it's actually really interesting. That might be a really interesting topic. That's actually, I'm gonna write that down. Actually, I'm gonna write this down right now. Because I think this is a super interesting topic. Like, what is the line between liberation and what's the line between liberation and terrorism? I think this is actually really interesting. Holy crap! I'm gonna see if I can get some big names to come along for this one because I think it might be super interesting. All right, thanks. Okay. We're about to get started. Hey, Katie, could you check your DMs? Not sure if you saw
Yes,
that.
I'll
Okay.
check my DMs. I just had to prove that I'm wearing pants. Oh my god, Yubi is on? Oh,
Yeah.
god.
Well, I'll check your DMs and you'll see why.
Uh, fine.
Okay, so we're gonna be starting momentarily, audience. I'm just waiting on something here, and then as soon as I get it, then we will Do it. Okay. How are you doing today, Doobie?
I'm doing very well, actually. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Glad to hear it.
Mhm. All right, so we'll just get started.
Yeah, Doobie should wear us if he's wearing pants or not.
I'm not wearing pants. Yeah, it's flopped out there. It's not. No.
I fucking DM'd Doobie because I saw this thing and I was like, this is fucking awful. This is so disturbing. Like I thought you were a
I like
hot
this one. What
frog,
the fuck?
and now and no, you look like an old version of yourself. You used to look good, and now you just look like the older version of you. You know, like the castaway version.
This is like weekend relaxing, Doobie, okay? Leave me alone.
I like the
It's
hat.
like the equivalent of frog sweatpants.
Doesn't he look adorable with the hat, right? Like
I think the
sun
hat's
hat,
cute.
it's really
Yeah,
good.
he looks very
The
precious.
hat is fine. The body isn't. Erudite, do you mind if I go and get
It's
like
weird.
a choker too? I think it would be cool
No.
if we both had it.
No,
She
Cool.
owns
but
chokers now.
you do
She
whatever.
patented it, and
Yeah,
then you
I
can't use
patented them, and you need my permission to wear them ever, and you owe me $1 if you wear it.
I will come to your stream and donate that $1. Just give me a
Thanks.
second.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Prime, you're not allowed to wear chokers though.
Understood.
Mostly because I don't think they'd suit your aesthetic.
I don't think so either, right? I'll ask you and Doobie then. Are you the type to either of you the type to wear jewelry?
I wear jewelry all the time. You can't tell, but I have like 5 piercings in. I recently ripped out piercings, but I used to have like 9 piercings in. But
I'm assuming you're using that
by accident.
metaphorically. Holy shit!
No. I got like caught on my purse and like I had a double helix that got like ripped out from the back. It was really painful. Yeah, I missed streaming for a couple of days. It was like actually like I've had a lot of injuries. It might have been one of the most painful things I've gone through. Yeah. Damaging your cartilage is not fun. Yeah. But yeah, I've got like earrings and stuff that you can't see.
Okay.
And up
I've
in here too.
I wear a thing. I don't know if I'd call it jewelry, but I guess it's like technically jewelry. But it's like a little medallion thing that I've been forced to wear for reasons. But beyond that, I don't really wear jewelry. I used to wear like I had my grandfather's like a gold bracelet my grandfather left me. Pretty sure it's fake gold. But when I was in my broke phase, like 10 years ago, I sold it for $35. So, yeah. Other than that, no jewelry.
Okay.
I'm really curious about why you're forced to wear a medallion.
Oh,
It's
no.
it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. I can assure you.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I'll ask.
I don't mind explaining, but I don't want to like interrupt the whole.
Okay.
You know.
No problem. Hey, I'll ask Katie as well, but I already know the answer. Are you a big fan of jewelry?
I'm a big fan of jewelry, but I don't wear a lot of jewelry. I get very self-conscious about it and a bit anxious, so I don't end up wearing. Like I really like chokers, for example, but you know, I still remember like being 15 and hearing that's what girls wear when they are trying to indicate they want to suck your dick, right? And I was like, I don't want to tell guys I want to suck their dicks, so I guess
what?
I'm not wearing chokers.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What is this? Explain. I missed that part.
You're a slut when you wear chokers. Like it's a slutty
Chokers? Really?
aesthetic. Mhm.
Are you joking
chokers,
right now?
chokers means anal.
No, like that's what you were
literally
told.
the
That's
thing.
what I was told growing up, at least. That you're like kind of.
No, I'm surprised by Prime. I don't know if he's fucking with me or not. It's really
don't
confusing.
know.
Chokers are super sexy. They definitely have like a certain amount of like sexuality to them, like versus just like a random necklace. I don't know.
Okay.
I get a lot of comments on the choker. They're like, "Oh, choker," which
Really?
I think is fair. Yeah, I think it's fair too. Like when I see myself in a choker, I'm like, "Nice, hot."
Yeah.
And then when you grow up conservative, you're ashamed for it.
Yeah, I was basically told that's like chokers are the sign to that you're sucking dick, right? So I was like, well, I like chokers, but I also don't want to send that impression every time I'm wearing a choker. Maybe just when I want to send that impression. So I guess never chokers to never like let people know.
All right. Well, apparently you were inspired by erudite though today, so I'll just leave that there. But all right.
Mommy.
Oh boy. I won't explore this the way I want to. So let's